I was born in America, I have an American passport, but sometimes I don't feel American enough. That would have been a great intro to this video, but actually I was born in Canada. I do have an American passport though, and everything else that I said in that statement is true. And so today I just kind of want to talk about that and be completely transparent. And I know that there are other people that probably have gone through this kind of similar experience or feel the same way. So today I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts on this and my experience and how I think that it's best to kind of deal with this kind of situation and deal with certain identity crises that sometimes we might have throughout our life. I'm also going to be trying to answering the question which some of you guys might be curious about, of what does it even mean to be American enough? I guess just overall, I've never felt quite connected with American culture. For example, like I've never really understood the concept of the Super Bowl. Like I'm not a super big football fan or anything like that. I'm also not really into American TV shows, and so that's never really been a conversation that I've been able to kind of get involved with. I know that America is a melting pot, but I feel like there are still certain things that I just haven't been able to feel connected with. Like when I was a kid, there would be this big deal about Thanksgiving and such, and like all my friends would be talking about how they would go home and have this huge feast as a family with Thanksgiving turkey and all of these different things, and it's just like a time for family gathering and such. But my family, given that my parents are immigrants from China, we didn't really celebrate Thanksgiving as much, and so the closest thing that I ever got to Thanksgiving dinner was the school lunch that they served with cold turkey slices, some strange stuffing, and a not so great pumpkin pie. So I think that that's just like something that really made me feel not as American. And I feel like it also, like, just taking a step back, it really also does kind of have to do more with, like, I guess in terms of my personality. I think that, I don't know, just what I've noticed is that, like, for when I was growing up, most of my friends were Asian or Chinese, or like even my parents' friends for the most part were all like family friends and such were Chinese, and so I think that I was kind of bubbled up in a smaller community in that sense, and so I didn't really have many like white friends, I guess you could say, and I don't really know how to put it into words, but it's just kind of like this inherent innate feeling that you feel sometimes when you're kind of like just at school or a part of different clubs. Like for example, I played ice hockey, and I think that there were just certain things that my teammates liked and how they talked and how they behaved and their overall mindset that was just very different from mine, I guess you could say. And I mean, that's not to say that there's anything wrong with it, but I think that just, I don't know, maybe it also has to do with the fact that I may be a slightly more introverted person, but I'm honestly not sure if that's what it is, because I do feel like I draw energy from being around people, and that's like what an extrovert is like, right? So I think it's just kind of like this unheard of, unspoken of, but it's just like if you know that kind of feeling of not being able to like completely, I guess, I don't know if assimilate is the right word, but like kind of like blend in with the rest of your peers in terms of that. Or like I never did cheerleading or anything like that, and I wasn't a super girly girl. I remember in middle school, even in elementary school, like there was already like some kind of like segregation in groups and such, and I think that just happens regardless of whether you're regardless of your ethnicity really. But I think that that played a role in that, I guess I could say. Going into high school too, I was a part of the International Baccalaureate program, which consisted largely of immigrant children like myself. So I think that throughout elementary and middle school, most of my friends were Asian, and we kind of like the things that we did, and obviously there was more importance placed on Sunday school math classes and doing well in school and such. And I think that that's another thing, like maybe the similar values, the similar cultural values in that sense, I think maybe brought us together more. But I think going forward towards middle school and then in high school too, because I was in the IB program, I mostly interacted with other children that were children of immigrants, and so we were like almost like we all kind of like agreed we were in our own like separated bubble. There was almost like this like superiority complex where like IB students are better and then like other students were not as good, but obviously not in a mean way or anything like that. But I think that that just like that experience kind of further like made me feel like not super close and connected with overall American society, if that makes sense. I think it's just very hard to kind of say in words, and I don't want to make people upset or like mad or anything, but I guess like I know that there are some American born Chinese that are able to kind of merge into like society as a whole and have, like, this is gonna sound bad, but like just like, I guess have more white friends almost. And I mean, I don't think that being American means that you have to be friends with white people at all, but I just think that maybe the different values played a role in it and like different priorities. But it's interesting though how right now when I'm in China studying abroad at Peking University, it's strange because I actually feel like I'm not Chinese enough. But that will be a subject for another video, and I just thought I'd throw that out there. And it's just really interesting to see how the cultures may clash and how there may be kind of like discrepancies within that. And I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit, even though it may be a bit of a sensitive topic. And on that note, on throwing out random things, I do want to say that there have been people, like parents of like Chinese parents, for example, that have asked me like,
Hey, when did you come to the US?
and I'm like, I've been in the US like my entire life. And they're like,
Oh my gosh.
I think it might also be because like my Chinese is slightly better than some ABCs, I guess you could say. But I think that maybe just like the vibe that I give off is not like your typical American vibe, if there is a typical American vibe. Again, this, like, take what I say with what you will.
And this is just my opinion and my take on the whole American immigrant just fitting in kind of situation.
I do feel like being American is not really an actual concept. It's not something tangible that you can really like quantify or define, or even like qualitatively. You can't like say, oh, this person is American and this person isn't based on such, such, and such. I feel like it's more of like a stereotype that's placed, like it's not like a direct stereotype, I guess, not something that people actively refer to, but I think it's just like subconsciously it's there in that sense, like whether you're American or not. And I feel like if you are a first generation immigrant or a second generation immigrant, sometimes you might feel like that sense of kind of being disconnected or not entirely connected with American society and American culture. And because I don't know, I feel like this obviously doesn't happen on a day-to-day basis, but there are instances where I just do, like, I ask myself, like, is this really my home, or like am I a guest? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if anybody's ever felt this way, but that's just kind of something that I've experienced at times. I think it's almost inevitable in some instances where that feeling of disconnection, but I do think that it is something that we should talk about more, and something that I'm sure that some people may experience but don't feel the need to talk about or don't want to talk about. And in hindsight, really, being American, like, there's no definition, right? And it's really a mix of cultures because, as I mentioned before, America is a big melting pot with a bunch of different types of unique, diverse, and special cultures. But I think that sometimes it's just people want to associate American with a specific identity, and it's really hard to describe in words, but I think it's just like that kind of feeling and that kind of subconscious stereotype that's prevalent within society. As a second generation immigrant, I think that there have been instances where it's been hard to kind of balance the two identities, almost like being American and Canadian and being Chinese, and trying to like bring them together, I suppose, because we are one person. Like, we have different parts of our identities that make us whole, and I think that it just can be difficult sometimes to kind of, I guess, gauge like how much of this part of your identity takes of your whole identity in that sense. And I do know that especially it's hard because like there are so many other things going on in life, and as I mentioned before in my why I'm moving to China videos, I think that just that feeling of being, that fear of being disconnected from your original culture, of like, for me it would be like my Chinese heritage, like my fear of losing that little culture that I have left, especially in terms of like speaking the language, speaking Chinese, Mandarin, or whatever, regardless of what country you originally came from, what language you originally speak. I think that for a lot of immigrant children, maintaining and keeping up with that language can sometimes be hard. And I just like, for me personally, I place a lot of importance on being able to keep that language and keep that part of my identity. But at the same time, it's like a question of how much of that do I keep and how much of that do I associate with myself versus the American part of me, and like just striking that equilibrium, I suppose you could say, can be very confusing and very like almost like an identity crisis at times. And on that note, I will say that I do feel more American in China, whatever being American even means. But I think it's just like, it has to do with maybe the environment that you're in and what kind of people you're surrounded by and such. And so now it's even more complicated for me, I feel like, because it's like this fear of not being American enough in one place and this idea of being too American in another place. That has been a new concept that has been introduced to me and something that I would love to talk about more in the future, so let me know if you'd be interested in that. So I think at the end of the day, it's just really important to remember that you don't have to fit into a single identity to be American or to honestly just be yourself. There are so many different facets that make up who you are, and I think it's just important to embrace that. And obviously I know it's way easier said than done, but I think it's just taking those steps to try to learn more about yourself and more about what you value and who you are as a person and what you want to attain in the future is very important and crucial in terms of shaping your identity as a whole. I think that at some point in our lives we all might feel like we don't belong, or we don't belong in this place or that place. And I think that's totally okay, and it's only natural for us to feel that way sometimes. But really, I think that just kind of being okay with not being okay is sometimes something really important to learn, I think. And also, I feel like having different cultures and different perspectives really helps broaden your scope and how you see the world and how you're able to relate to different things and process information, which I think is super unique and super cool and not something that you should ever put yourself down for. And so I think that slowly and surely I'm just trying to accept and even appreciate the feeling of not being American enough, and just kind of finding myself and who I am and what I value is a journey that I'm still in the process of going on. And I think it's just something that we all have to go through and finding ourselves. So maybe I'm not American enough, and that's okay. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one.